Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm gonna really great to be here. I work on a project called Webrecorder and a bunch of related open source tools for web archiving. Actually, my colleague John is also here, and he'll be doing a workshop on Webrecorder tomorrow. But for today, I want to show basically how we're using containers for preservation and kind of some of the things that allows for. And so, just kind of to start with, sort of what are containers when it comes to software? They're basically lightweight, reusable application units. I think they were actually part of the Linux kernel, but now also supported on Windows. And they support essentially a fast startup and allow you essentially to connect services together by creating networks of containers, and they're much more lightweight than, for example, full-on virtual machines. And Docker is the most popular framework for containers, but it's not the only one. There's also others, and these are just some of the images that are often used with containers. For some reason, it's always the shipping containers, but I think the kitchen containers are also a good use of it. And so. First, I want to introduce the oldweb.today project, which is something I created in 2015. And the idea is essentially to put all these old browsers into emulators and then put the emulators into containers. I'm currently working on the new version of it. It's not quite ready, so I'll just show kind of the existing version of it. And what it does is, so we'll just start a demo and essentially, it's available now on oldweb.today, and you can kind of select any browser, and then you can enter a URL. For example, geocities.com. Maybe we'll do Netscape. Yeah, let's do Netscape, and then we'll go all the way back to 1996, for example, and just make sure that it. And here we actually have loading GeoCities from the Internet Archive in a version of Netscape running on Linux, and this is all running in a remote container, and it's interactive, and you could essentially browse, browse this site. Oh, maybe there was a. Let's try a different browser. Maybe that might be version that's too old, so let's try this version of Netscape on Mac. And so essentially, yeah, the way that this works is that it connects to multiple web archives that are out there. Currently it's using two. It's using Internet Archive and Archive It, but there's actually a list of several archives that are being connected to, and this kind of allows you to experience the web in the browser of the time that it was initially used at, and yeah, we've got a few different browsers here, and can essentially connect to any content that you can find in the Wayback Machine can be browsed through this. So that's oldweb today. That's kind of the beginning of my work with containers. And that's actually the old system. The new system actually separates out the browser from the video and audio stream. This version doesn't yet support the audio. The next version will. And kind of just to keep going, the next thing I want to show is WebRecord IO. So while oldweb.today focuses on a lot of these old browsers, Netscape, Internet Explorer, with Webrecorder, the goal is essentially to allow users to archive more modern websites using some of the, but still being able to capture modern technologies, such as, for example, Flash. And so I'll actually do another demo here. So I guess this isn't that modern, but this is a version of essentially an older site that has a Java applet. If you browse the site now, of course this Java applet won't work anymore, obviously, but it's actually still possible to run sites that have Java applets on them. And another example that you might remember is, for example, if we go to, you might remember this as a Flash site from a few years back. Of course, this is what it looks like in a modern browser. If we go to Webrecorder, and one of the things that Webrecorder allows is to archive sites directly and create your own web archives as you browse. And so using Webrecorder, we can select one of these browsers. So let's go with Firefox 56 here, and I can then load. Again, it's starting a browser in the container, and now we can actually run the Flash site and use Homestar Runner and create an archive of it. And it's actually maybe we'll. Away from me! You get the idea. So it's actually captured. That content is now in this Webrecorder collection, and I can share that with anyone and have them use Flash. And so using containers allows us to put this technology in a way that can be preserved for future use. But that still is just capturing the content from the client side, so it's basically what we're able to archive from using the browser. There's still the question of the web server, and for some reason the web server should go in a container that looks like that. I'm not entirely sure why, but so the next evolution of this idea is, can we put web servers in containers as well? And for that, it's a quick created this quick prototype around the Scalar platform. I know that Reclaim offers Scalar as one of the options that is hosted, and so what this does is it kind of extends the idea of archiving, and also actually copies an entire Scalar site into a container. And so in interest of time, I'll just show a quick video of how that works. And so using that site, we basically enter a URL that points to a Scalar site, and then kind of building on the existing components that we have, the remote browsers. It'll launch a special browser that then runs an import and essentially copies an existing Scalar site into a container, and then at the same time it starts other browsers that actually run a crawl on all of the links that are external. So for example, any links that point from Scalar, which is basically just a CRM, to YouTube or Vimeo or any external includes, will of course not be captured simply through the import-export process. So for those, we need to do the web archiving approach, where we run a browser-based crawl, and so that's what you can see in this video. Is a bunch of essentially a bunch of browsers being automated, and they're visiting these YouTube sites, and the end result is that it's going to create a web archive at the same time as the Scalar site is being imported into another container, and then at the end, all of that is merged into a single container. And so you can kind of see the import process coming here, and so kind of to show the end result, maybe I'll be able to launch that. So I can select this particular site. Let's see if it will launch here, and then essentially what it'll do is, what it does is it basically combines the actual running Scalar site with web archives that are stored in a format called just sort of the standard web archiving format, while the actual server is preserved kind of as is basically a live server. And so this is kind of the most recent version of this site. I can open it in a new tab here. And so I think that, let's see, just to demonstrate how this is, so this is actually an archive site, but I can, for example, let's see, maybe I can actually do a search on this because it's not just a static web archive, it's a fully running server. Yeah, and in fact, I can even log in and modify this server, but those changes aren't going to take effect because it's just running in a containerized instance. And if I reload, yeah, so I can actually edit the whole thing here. And so this was kind of the idea for with Scalar. And then the last thing I want to show is, and there's additional details on the site here on scalar.webrecord.net, is, okay, here's the video. I've also started on a similar prototype for WordPress, the idea being that you could actually create, sort of combine everything that so far and actually edit and build digital objects in containers and then commit them again to create new containers. So just kind of very, very quickly, this is a brand new prototype that I've just started actually over the last couple of days, so it might not work, but I think it takes a second for it to start up here, maybe not. Yeah, so I'm basically starting with a brand new WordPress here, and so I can then what I can do is I'm creating this WordPress install, and then I can commit that to a container. So for example, I can call it to WordPress, and then so now this appears in the list, and so I can restart it, and it'll pick up exactly from where I left off, which is an empty WordPress. And then, just kind of in the interest of time, I'll show some previous examples where, for example, I've created a couple posts, and again, all of these are launching the WordPress and the browser. When a container isn't running, there's no permanent server there. And so for example, here is oh, maybe this isn't empty one. Oh, WordPress instances that are launched on demand, and so kind of the same idea as with Scalar, we could add additional. So, for example, here is a YouTube embed. It's not yet archived, but we could add web archiving on top of this so that we can archive the WordPress site as a server and then archive the YouTube separately as a web archive. And then, for example, I could, let's say if I wanted to delete this post, I can commit that and then restore the old version through the creation of another container. And not sure how much time I have left, but okay. Well, maybe I'll try to do that. Yeah. So kind of demonstrate how that works. So let's say I have. And then, so yeah, so this is just a WordPress site, just kind of the default. And so I want to, let's see, maybe I want to delete that and create a new post. I'm going to publish that. here, and so I deleted that YouTube post, so this one, and I can so I'll give it a name, demo new, for example, and I can commit that, and so that version is now created in its own container, but I can still go back and kind of restore the previous version of WordPress simply by going back to the previous container. And again, this has nothing to do with WordPress itself. It's like WordPress has no idea that it's being launched multiple times, and I can just basically switch multiple versions in this way. So thank you. Let me. I think that's. Yeah, basically all these tools that I showed are open source. This latest prototype is not yet on GitHub because it's so new, but yeah, thank you, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Any questions?
How much integration is needed with like Scalar and WordPress for this to work? You have to like work with APIs or Shape or
for the Scalar integration, yes, that required using the essentially the import-export API that Scalar provides, and as a result, it was essentially possible to export an entire Scalar site and import it into another container, and then also the APIs that provide lists of URLs that contain external embeds. So that was. Yeah, in the case of Scalar, I didn't have access to any of the Scalar projects directly. If I did, it would actually have been easier, but without that, an API is required. So yeah, there's some custom applications of the API. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the WordPress one, and I know it's still new, are you planning on allowing it to like import a WordPress site instead of having to install a new one every time? Like, what if it already exists?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I didn't have a chance to get to that in the demo, but yeah, I mean, right. I think that there will probably be several approaches. One is if you actually have the WordPress site, there should be a path to just take that and put it into a container.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that would definitely be kind of a main way to get a site into it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. This is super interesting. My knowledge of containers was summarized in the first slide, so I'm curious. Like what is the object in thinking about this, like from preservation, like if you wanted to kind of like freeze a site or use this to preserve a site, like now you have a container to preserve, like it's like what are some of
the Scalar
applications with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, in this case, the main infrastructure is Docker, which is sort of a large open source project and run by a corporation. So that is one thing. But there's also a standardized container runtime that is being created that is more of an open standard. And so I think that essentially, I think mostly it's tied to the Linux kernel, I believe. So it can run across different. All of these containers that I've showed are Linux-based, and so I think as long as you have a particular Linux kernel, the containers should run. And then beyond that, beyond say 10, 15 years, you would probably need a virtual machine, and inside the virtual machine is where you put the Docker runtime. So yeah, there's layers involved, but I think that the container is sort of the kind of one of the top. Yeah, they're kind of a stack of things, and containers are towards the top of that.